Have you ever looked into a smile and felt something sharp hidden behind it, like a blade dressed in kindness? It's that uneasy feeling you can't quite explain, the sting in your chest when someone twists your words, the quiet regret when their praise turns out to be bait. Manipulation rarely arrives as open betrayal. It slips in like fog, leaving you doubting yourself, questioning your memory, softening your boundaries until you don't recognize your own reflection. We've all been there, sitting in silence, telling ourselves it's better to keep the peace, while deep inside we feel the slow erosion of our worth. The Stoics warned of this danger. If you don't hold fast to your values, someone else will define them for you. The battle isn't outside, it's inside, in how you choose to respond, in whether you give away your power or guard it. So the question becomes, when their mask slips, will you remain unshaken? Stay with me, and let's walk into the silence where manipulators lose their grip. As we step into the first chapter, picture yourself in a crowded room where smiles feel a little too polished and words drip with sugar. You sense something off. The laughter is just a little too loud, the praise a little too heavy. Your chest tightens because you know beneath that charm there may be a hook waiting to sink in. That's the quiet way manipulation begins, not as a blow, but as a whisper. Now imagine your instinct telling you to react, to defend, to pull the mask off right away. That urge is human, but ask yourself, what if that's exactly what they want? Manipulators thrive on reaction. They study the tremor in your voice, the heat in your face, the crack in your patience. They measure you by what shakes you. If you lash out too soon, you hand them the script. Stoicism offers a sharper way. Hold back, watch, pretend not to see. This isn't weakness, it's discipline. Seneca once wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The friction here is your silence. In that stillness, the mask slips. They grow careless. They talk too much. They start believing in their own act. I've seen it play out. The one who stayed calm while others tried to bait him slowly became the most feared presence in the room. Not because he was loud, but because nothing moved him. That silence cut deeper than any accusation. True control doesn't come from striking first. It comes from being unshaken. And when you refuse to be baited, you don't just protect your peace, you expose their hunger for control. Hold your ground. The game unravels without you lifting a hand. Moving into the second chapter, imagine a room filled with voices, sharp words tossed like stones, and yet one figure sits still, silent, steady, unshaken. The manipulator circles, testing, probing, waiting for the flinch. They speak with rhythm, with rehearsed cadence, pressing on hidden insecurities like a pianist, striking keys they know too well. But when no reaction comes, when their words fall into emptiness, something unexpected happens. The silence unsettles them. There is a strange power in the pause. It neither agrees nor resists. It simply exists, and in that space, their performance begins to collapse. Manipulators are artists of control. Their brush is your reaction. Their canvas is your face. Give them nothing, and they are left holding their tools with nowhere to go. We are taught that silence is weakness, that it means defeat. But the Stoics knew better. Silence is not the absence of power, it is its concentration. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you choose stillness over reaction, you cut the strings they hope to pull. Think of the last argument that spun out of control. Chances are it began with something small, a sarcastic jab, a guilty nudge. and before long you were dragged into a storm of words. What if instead you had paused? What if you had let their words echo back into silence, stripped of the fuel they needed to grow? That single choice could have changed everything. True silence is a boundary. It says, "I hear you, but I will not carry your chaos." It is mastery disguised as calm, and when the storm rages again, you'll know this truth. Sometimes the loudest response is no response at all. From here, the ground begins to tilt in your favor. Advancing to the third chapter, imagine hearing your own name twisted in someone else's mouth, reshaped into a story that doesn't belong to you. A few words bent, a raised brow, and suddenly you are defending yourself against a version of you that never existed. That ache in your chest when you realize the room is filled with whispers you didn't start, it cuts deep. The instinct screams to clear it up, to rush in with explanations, to prove yourself. But here's the trap. The more you chase after their version of your story, the further you drift from your own. In a world where perception often outweighs truth, facts don't always win. Energy does. Presence does. People believe what they feel before they believe what they hear. That is why the Stoics taught that integrity is not an argument, but a posture. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You don't need to scream truth. You need to embody it. I once saw a man accused of things he didn't do. He never shouted back, never scrambled to defend himself. He kept working, kept showing up, calm and steady. Over time, the lies collapsed under their own weight. People noticed not the noise, but the silence, the dignity of a man who refused to play in another's storm. That quiet consistency became louder than any rumor. Your narrative is built through action, not reaction. Rumors fade, but patterns remain. So don't waste nights chasing every whisper. Build. Live cleanly. Let your results roar. Because in the end, the story belongs not to those who speak the loudest, but to those who stand the steadiest. And from here, we step into even sharper ground. Here's where the fourth chapter opens, in the quiet corners of a room where alliances are born, not from truth, but from whispers. You see the sideways glances, the hushed tones, the invisible threads that bind people together beneath the surface. Manipulators rarely act alone. They thrive in circles, small groups fueled not by loyalty, but by insecurity and fear. Their power is subtle, not in the words they speak, but in the silences they exploit. Now imagine that circle as a fragile web. On the surface, it looks strong, united, untouchable. But beneath, the threads are thin, stitched together by flattery and unspoken agreements. And here's the secret. You don't need to tear it apart with force. You only need to tug gently at one thread, and the tension will spread. Compliment one person more than the others. Ask a quiet question in private. Suddenly, doubt begins to whisper inside the circle itself. Why him and not me? Why does she get that attention? Jealousy doesn't shout. It drips slowly until the foundation starts to crack. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In this setting, it means there is power in being underestimated. When others chase approval, you stay still. When others scramble for belonging, you withhold just enough to make them think for themselves. That quiet detachment unsettles the very balance manipulators rely on. I've watched entire groups fracture this way, not with confrontation, but with calm presence. You don't accuse. You don't expose. You simply make the room less comfortable for manipulation to grow. Over time, the circle unravels and the manipulator feels it slipping, even if they can't say why. You don't defeat their circle with noise. You dissolve it with contrast, by being the one who doesn't chase, doesn't flinch, doesn't beg. And from that calm center, the whole room slowly rewrites itself. From here, the next move reveals an even sharper edge. At this stage, you finally see the cracks in someone's performance. The mask doesn't fit as tightly as it once did. Their words don't line up with their actions. The urge inside you rises to point, to expose, to shout the truth so no one else gets fooled. But here's the danger. The moment you shine the light too aggressively, they flip the script. Suddenly, they're the victim, the misunderstood one. And you look like the unstable accuser. Just like that, the room shifts, and truth is buried beneath doubt. The Stoics would tell you, don't rip off the mask. Let it split on its own. Epictetus taught that wisdom is restraint, that silence and patience often reveal more than force ever can. Instead of accusing, you observe. Instead of attacking, you ask simple questions. Isn't it strange this only comes up when she isn't here? Or didn't he say something different last week? These aren't weapons, they're mirrors. And mirrors don't lie. I've seen how powerful this can be. In one meeting, a man tried to twist another's words to his advantage. No one shouted, no one accused. A single calm question was asked, and the silence that followed said everything. The room began connecting dots on its own. That's how illusions crack, not by confrontation, but by reality pressing too hard against the lie. Carl Jung once wrote that the most dangerous things are not our enemies, but the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. The same is true here. People don't want to admit they've been misled. They resist. But when the cracks become too obvious, even pride can't hold the illusion together. Your task is not to destroy. It is to see. To remain the one who notices without rage, who speaks only when it matters, who trusts that truth rises when given space. Once the crack is visible, it cannot be unseen. And from that fracture, the entire performance begins to collapse. Entering the 6th chapter, imagine walking into a room without needing to announce yourself, without demanding attention, and yet when you leave, the absence speaks louder than any presence. That is power, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't shout. Manipulators can't stand it, because it flips their entire game. Instead of you needing their approval, they begin to need what you bring. And once that shift happens, everything changes. Think about it. Manipulators thrive by creating a sense of scarcity. They act as though they hold the keys: approval, opportunity, connection. They keep others reaching, performing, hoping to stay in their favor. But what if you turned it? What if your steadiness, your skills, your ability to execute calmly under pressure made you irreplaceable? You don't need to advertise your worth. You prove it by showing up consistently, delivering without drama, moving with quiet competence. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That is your leverage, not words, not explanations, just the work itself." When you provide value, not as a plea for attention, but as a reflection of who you are, others begin to rely on you. And in that reliance, the balance shifts. Suddenly, your silence is tolerated, your distance respected, your boundaries accepted, because they know what they stand to lose. I've seen it firsthand. A colleague once dismissed the quietest man in the room until deadlines hit. That same man became the anchor, the one everyone turned to. He never asked for recognition. He simply delivered. Over time, his restraint became authority, and those who once overlooked him now bent to his rhythm. The truth is, manipulators can't control someone who doesn't need them, and when they realize they need you more than you need them, their grip begins to crumble. That's not arrogance, that's freedom. The freedom to give with intention, to walk away without guilt, to know your value without demanding it. From here, the silence in your presence becomes unshakable, and the game they once played no longer works. From here, imagine standing across from someone who thrives on your reactions. They prod, they flatter, they jab, they guilt. Every move they make is designed to pull something out of you: anger, defense, explanation, surrender. To them, your emotions are currency. But what happens when the coins stop falling? What happens when you don't resist, don't react, but simply reflect? There's a strange shift when you become the mirror. Mirrors don't argue, they don't explain, they don't distort, they only show. And when a manipulator begins to see their own behavior calmly reflected back, without sarcasm, without judgment, discomfort rushes in. The script they depend on begins to unravel because the play no longer has an audience. Stoicism teaches us that mastery is not about defeating others, but mastering ourselves. Seneca said, "He who angers you conquers you." The mirror denies them that victory. Instead of exposing their lies with outrage, you respond with calm curiosity. When they flatter you, you smile, say thank you, then change the subject. When they provoke, you ask a simple question. Didn't you say something different before? That quiet question lands like a stone in still water, ripples of doubt spreading outward. I've seen this silence work. A manipulator once interrupted a friend of mine repeatedly. Instead of snapping back, he simply paused, letting the silence hang heavy. The room noticed. The manipulator squirmed. What was once control turned into self-exposure. That is the hidden strength of the mirror. You don't absorb their tactics. You reflect them gently until the cracks begin to show, first to them, then to everyone else watching. And when the collapse comes, you won't have lifted a finger. You won't have fought. You'll have simply stood still. Because in a world addicted to reaction, the one who cannot be baited becomes untouchable. Now imagine the 8th chapter, a storm brewing outside while you sit inside a quiet room. The windows rattle, the wind howls, yet your cup of tea doesn't spill. That is stillness. And stillness is exactly what a manipulator cannot survive. They need your chaos to feed theirs. They need your unpredictable swings, your doubts, your overreactions. Every time you abandon your rhythm to match theirs, you give them access. But when you anchor yourself, their pattern begins to starve. Chaos is their element. Order is your shield. When you wake at the same time, when your words are steady, when your choices come from values instead of moods, something shifts. You stop being readable. You stop being interesting to the one who thrives on disorder. Routine may sound dull to those who crave drama, but to the Stoics, it was armor. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that a disciplined life is a free life. Freedom from being pulled like a puppet into someone else's storm. I once knew a man who always responded instantly. Every text, every jab, every provocation. He was exhausted. But the moment he began slowing down, pausing, choosing, the manipulator lost their grip. The bait no longer worked. The pattern cracked. What looked like boredom to others was actually strength. The drama had no place to land. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Stillness is how you drag the unconscious pattern into the light. It is not passive, it is deliberate. Each day you choose peace over panic, rhythm over reaction. And soon the manipulator faces themselves in the mirror of your calm. No chaos to cling to, no cracks to press into. Just silence, structure, and strength. That's when the game dies, not with a shout, but with the quiet refusal to play. This is where the 9th chapter unfolds, in the spaces you choose to inhabit, in the circles you allow near your fire. Manipulators don't only target individuals, they scan environments. They search for cracks not just in people, but in the structure of the group itself. A strong person surrounded by weak ground can still sink. That is why it's not enough to fortify yourself. You must fortify the space around you. Picture a room buzzing with chatter. Someone slips in a vague remark, a half smile, a compliment that doesn't feel clean. Then they watch. Who laughs too quickly? Who stays silent? Who leans in? They're testing for cracks. Those who crave validation, those who struggle with boundaries, those who want to be liked at all costs. From there, one word at a time, the infection spreads until truth feels like confrontation and silence feels like guilt. The Stoics warned us to guard our peace, not only in solitude, but in community. You don't need 100 voices. You need a few steady ones, the kind that don't shift with the room, who don't flinch when truth is spoken. That is your fortress, not a cage of isolation, but a standard, a living boundary that decides what energy is allowed inside. Marcus Aurelius lived by this. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Surround yourself with chaos, and you absorb chaos. Surround yourself with clarity, and you grow stronger. I've seen this truth in action. A team poisoned by gossip crumbled until one person set a standard. No more whispers, no more hidden barbs. The air cleared. Those who thrived on shadows left. The ones who stayed built something lasting. That's what happens when you choose light over noise. A fortress is not built in a day. It rises one conversation at a time, one decision at a time. And when it stands, manipulators cannot survive inside its walls. They don't suffocate because you fought them. They fade because you made their tactics irrelevant. And from that ground, the next lesson takes root. Advancing to the 10th chapter, imagine watching someone weave a performance, their charm practiced, their stories polished, their timing precise. The natural urge is to rip the mask away, to show the room who they really are. But here's the trap. Strike too soon, and you become the spectacle. You look like the unstable one, and the truth gets buried under suspicion. Manipulators know this. They count on your urgency, your pain, your hunger to be understood. The Stoics would counsel patience. Seneca wrote that time discovers truth, not rage, not argument. Time. Let them speak, let them perform, let the rope unspool. In their hands, overconfidence becomes poison. The more they believe they fooled you, the sloppier they grow. The lies stretch too far. The tone grows arrogant. What once looked like charm begins to look like control. What once felt persuasive begins to feel hollow. And the shift doesn't come because you shouted. It comes because silence gave them room to expose themselves. I've seen this unfold. In a meeting, a man spoke too long, his stories twisting until even his allies shifted uncomfortably. No one called him out. No one had to. His own words became the trap. That is what it means to give just enough rope. Not cruelty, not surrender, just space. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Manipulation is often just avoidance in disguise. But the longer they avoid, the heavier the mask becomes. And when no one rushes to rescue them, the cracks widen. So when the urge rises to fight, pause. Ask yourself, is the rope already tightening? Are they already unraveling under their own weight? Often the most devastating exposure isn't loud, it's quiet, a room waking up on its own. And when that happens, you won't need to lift a finger. The collapse will take care of itself. Here's where the 11th chapter unfolds, in that charged moment when someone looks you in the eye and throws an accusation that feels completely off base. Your chest tightens, your mind races. The urge is almost automatic. You want to defend, to explain, to prove the truth. But that impulse is exactly the trap. The moment you begin justifying, you've stepped into their arena. They control the rhythm. You're chasing clarity inside the fog they created. The Stoics would remind us, clarity doesn't come from matching chaos with chaos. It comes from composure. Instead of defending, redirect. When someone makes a claim, look them calmly in the eye and ask, why do you think that? With one question, the energy shifts. Suddenly, they have to explain themselves. Manipulators hate specifics. They thrive on suggestion, on implication, on letting the room fill in the blanks. But when pressed, their foundation cracks. I once watched a man accused in a meeting. Instead of flaring up, he simply asked, "Can you walk me through why you believe that?" The room fell silent. The accuser stumbled. Within moments, their confidence melted. No shouting, no defense, just calm redirection. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That is the standard. Let others hold their own words up to the light. When you refuse to panic, when you slow the tempo, the manipulator is left with nothing but the weight of their own story. This isn't weakness. It's strength disguised as patience. You're not bowing down, but you're not lashing out either. You're setting a higher rhythm, one based on clarity, not confusion. And in that rhythm, their power dissolves. From here, the ground begins to shift towards silence that unsettles and truth that can no longer be twisted. At this stage, imagine a world where everyone expects you to be instantly reachable. The phone buzzes and you reply. A message arrives and you explain. A question is asked and you justify. Bit by bit, your availability becomes your prison. Manipulators thrive here. They learn your patterns, your habits, the rhythm of your responses. They know exactly how long it takes before you cave. Predictability is their map, but silence, that unsettles them. Unavailability makes the ground shift beneath their feet. Here's where Stoic wisdom cuts through the noise. Being tactically unavailable doesn't mean becoming cold or vanishing into isolation. It means being deliberate with your presence. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That power includes how and when you give access to yourself. You don't answer every ping. You don't rush into every fire. You decide where your energy belongs and where it doesn't." I once knew a man who always responded immediately. Every favor, every call, every demand answered. People respected him less, not more. But when he slowed down, when he delayed, when he stopped rushing to be available, something shifted. Suddenly, his time had weight. His silence made others consider their words more carefully. Those who valued him stayed. Those who only wanted to use him faded. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And part of becoming is learning distance. Distance from noise, from manipulation, from the expectation that you owe yourself to everyone. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. And when you stop offering instant access, you discover who is here for connection and who is here only for control. The truth is simple. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every request deserves your energy. When you create space, you gain clarity. When you break the pattern of availability, you build respect without demanding it. Let them wonder where you went. Let them feel the weight of your silence. Not out of cruelty, but because your peace no longer runs on someone else's schedule. And from that silence, your next move becomes yours alone. Entering the 13th chapter, picture someone standing before you with grand declarations on their tongue. They promise loyalty like it's eternal. They speak in absolutes, always, forever. You can count on me. It sounds reassuring. It feels good to believe. But words are light. Pressure is heavy. And when the weight of life presses down, many of those voices vanish, leaving you holding the silence of their absence. That's the truth about manipulators. They mimic loyalty to borrow your trust, but they don't invest in the labor that loyalty requires. Here's where Stoicism clears the fog. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." The Stoics echoed the same. Deeds reveal character, not speeches. Loyalty isn't tested when life is smooth. It's revealed when things fracture, when you're doubted, attacked, or left standing in the storm. Who shows up then? Who holds steady when it costs them something? That's the question that cuts deeper than any promise. I've seen it play out. People who clapped the loudest in public disappeared when silence was needed most. Their loyalty was performance, rehearsed and hollow. But then there were the few who never announced their devotion. They just stayed. They carried the weight quietly. And when the storm passed, you realized their consistency was worth more than 1,000 declarations. Manipulators count on your hunger for reassurance. They'll flatter, agree, echo your words, all while keeping their own skin out of the game. Watch closely. Do they follow through when it's inconvenient, or do they retreat behind excuses and delay? Results expose reality. Promises only reveal intent. So stop rewarding speeches. Start honoring evidence. Let your circle shrink if it must, because the ones who remain, the steady hands, the quiet anchors, are worth more than a crowd of performers. Loyalty is not loud. It is consistent. And when you learn to measure by actions instead of words, you'll never be fooled by empty promises again. From here, we step into the final clarity that makes manipulation powerless. Moving into the 14th chapter, imagine a room charged with tension. Eyes are sharp, voices tight, everyone waiting for you to snap. They expect anger, retaliation, the sting of revenge. But instead, you meet them with something they never prepared for: calm, composed kindness. Not weakness, not surrender. A deliberate grace that unsettles more than rage ever could. Because when war is expected and warmth is delivered, the script burns in their hands. Their grip depends on your predictability. Drama is their oxygen, and reaction is the air they breathe. They want the explosion, the defensiveness, the proof that they can move you. But when you respond with measured poise, when you smile, stay generous, and offer respect without giving them access to your core, the rhythm breaks. They stumble, they scramble. You've left the chessboard entirely and begun playing by rules they cannot follow. That is real danger. Silence wrapped in dignity. Kindness laced with discipline. Seneca once wrote, "How much better to heal than to seek revenge from injury." The Stoic doesn't hand over control by erupting in rage. He keeps it by mastering his own tone. I once watched a man wronged publicly. Instead of firing back, he thanked his critic and calmly left the room. Days later, it was the critic, not him, who looked unstable. His kindness had not excused the betrayal, it had magnified the contrast. Kindness used with precision is not softness, it is strategy. It creates space between their chaos and your stillness. It leaves them unsure, even haunted, because they cannot frame you as bitter or unstable. You leave quietly with no fire, no spectacle, just absence. And absence echoes longer than argument. This is not kindness for approval. It is kindness as armor, as weapon, as exit. And when you walk away with calm dignity, the story dies in their throat. What remains is the mirror, and their own reflection is all they have left to face. From here, the path leads toward the final and most decisive truth. Entering the 15th chapter, imagine the weight of betrayal pressing against your chest. You've seen the pattern now, the lies, the guilt trips, the quiet punishments when you didn't bend. The urge rises like fire, to confront, to teach, to make them feel the sting they gave you. You want them to know, to finally understand. But pause. That's not wisdom speaking. That's ego. And ego is exactly what manipulators bait. They don't learn from lessons. They twist them into stories where you become the problem, where your fire becomes their proof. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The reaction is the arena, the one thing you control." Teaching a manipulator a lesson is like pouring water into a sieve. It won't hold. They aren't confused. They aren't unaware. Most of the time, they know exactly what they're doing. What unsettles them isn't your lecture, but your refusal to play. I once watched a friend waste months trying to correct someone who thrived on twisting every word. Each attempt made him look more unstable, more desperate. Then one day he stopped. No explanations, no speeches, just distance. The silence unsettled the manipulator more than any argument ever did. Because manipulators don't fear your anger, they fear your absence. They don't fear exposure, they fear irrelevance. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the game. No more justifying, no more clarifying, no more trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. Growth, real growth, doesn't announce itself. It doesn't slam doors. It simply moves forward, leaving the old pattern behind. There's dignity in restraint, power in silence, freedom in letting life, not you, be the teacher. Your calm exit, your refusal to engage, becomes the loudest lesson of all. Not because you forced it, but because you no longer needed to. By then, you're no longer in the game at all. You've already outgrown it. The true strength in facing manipulators isn't loud retaliation, but quiet mastery. These Stoic strategies remind us that power is not in controlling others, but in guarding our own mind. Now the choice is yours. Which of these silent moves will you start practicing today? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective may guide someone else. And if this message gave you clarity, subscribe and stay with us as we explore more Stoic wisdom to sharpen your path forward.